The adults have done a horrible job with the world. 3 adults I know have done a good job. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Mahatma Gandhi. Kids can do it better because I think we're more compassionate.
Alrighty, hey guys, what's going on? This is Eric here, and I'm back with a brand new Kid Nation related video. I am joined with Anjay, original Blue Town council member on Kid Nation. How's it going, Anjay?
Doing great. How are y'all?
We're doing good. I mean, definitely a pleasure to have you here. You're the first guy that we got to get on interview, so really excited about it.
Yeah, that means you got nothing to compare me to, so thank you for having me first.
Definitely. So, let's go ahead and get into the interview. First question we got for you is, how were you selected to appear on the show?
Right, so how was I selected to appear on Kid Nation? So, basically, I used to do spelling bees when I was little. And in 2003, I was the youngest person to ever go to the National Spelling Bee at the time. That record's since been broken. And I did spelling bees up until 8th grade, because that's when you age out of it. And the December of that year, December 2006, my parents got a phone call, like on their answering machine, because we still, had phones back then. And it was pretty much, "Hi, you've done a lot of spelling bees. How would you like to be on this TV show where you could make a better world?" And my parents, being my parents, were like, "Okay, so which child molester is this?" Because they were very confused. And we called the number back because it sounded interesting. And they were like, "Yeah, we're from a TV show. We work with CBS. We want you to fill out this application. And then, let's see what you think about building a better world." So I filled it out. And if you go back on the Wayback Machine, you can find my original answers somewhere. And then we sent it off, and they said, "Okay, great. Now we want you to come to Dallas and do a screen test." And they sent us this 30-page contract, which is like, if I die, no one is responsible.
Sure.
And so we filled it out. I went to Dallas. We did the screen test, and afterwards, there's a couple of flights to LA to do a meeting with the producers, and that's pretty much how it worked.
Okay, that's great. So did you have to do any amount of auditioning or anything, or was it mostly just the process that you described?
So there wasn't auditioning in the sense of, like, I had to read lines and react to things. Like, there was no script that I was given and said, "Learn this and try it," like you would for a normal theater or movie audition, right? But it was a lot, I believe, of evaluation to make sure that I had a personality that they wanted to show, for better or for worse, and that I would either cause conflict or work with some of the people on the show. For example, when I met with the producers, they'd ask me things like, "If you got into an argument with somebody about this thing, how would you resolve it? What are your thoughts on the Iraq War?" And because that was a thing, and still is a thing somehow.
Right.
And for example, they even had us do like this 300 question psychological evaluation.
Wow.
And so I don't know if anyone here has experience with, like, psychology and all that, but it's like this thing that's like, do you argue with your parent? Sometimes, or no, never, always. Never, always, never, sometimes, always, often, always. And it's like, do I do drugs? Do I hear voices in my head? Do I do my homework on time? It's like 300 of these weird yes, no-ish questions, and they use it to come up with some kind of profile of you. And obviously they're selecting not for, like, that everyone's a nice, well-adjusted person. They're selecting for people who will, when put together, cause the most interesting story. So I guess that's the closest thing to an audition we had.
Right, that makes a lot of sense, definitely. So, how is it decided that you would become a town council member immediately, whereas, other people, like, there's no election, you just sort of were flown in as a town council member?
I have no idea how I became a benevolent town council member, but I just got a call that was like, "Hey, if you're interested, we'd like you to be one of the leaders." Sure, why not?
Oh, okay. That's exciting, yeah. How did you feel about that? Were you just like, "Oh, that makes sense," or?
I mean, so some context here. I have and always have been 2 years younger than everyone else in my grade.
Okay.
So I was never in a leadership position for anything. So this was a great opportunity for me, I thought.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, yeah, that's great. Have you ever put Kid Nation on your resume?
Kid Nation on my resume? Yes. It was in the one where it's in one of the first resumes whenever I applied for my first, like, college jobs and my internship with my current employer.
Okay. It probably went pretty well, right? Like, he has struck up conversations for you?
Kind of, but what really happened is, so I work at Microsoft and have since 2014 when I was an intern.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with the same group of people the entire time. And basically what happens is whenever someone shows up on their first day, they're like, you've got to see this about your new coworker. And then that happens. And that's pretty
Oh
much happened
wow.
for the last 5 years.
That's really interesting because I know
Yeah.
like some people like Mallory, for instance. I've gotten to talk with her, and I know that like pretty much no one at university knows that like she was even on Kid Nation. So
Who is this?
Mallory.
Mallory, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where my friends thought it was hilarious to tell everyone else, and I was like, sure, I'll roll with it.
Gotcha. That I'm glad you're taking it in good stride at least.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Does it impact your everyday life outside of that, especially with its resurging popularity?
Um, Kind of like I get some friend requests on Facebook. My Twitter followers have, jumped. Other than that, I get some cool opportunities like this. Um, it's not really a big impact on my day to day. No one's stopping me in the streets and going, "Oh my God, can I get your autograph?" And I don't have like a crowd of paparazzi outside my apartment.
Right. Did that ever happen, like where people were more interested in you in your daily life, like right after the show?
So in school, people were interested because it aired, my freshman year of high school. Other than that, there were a few times my parents, anecdotally said there's a few times people came up to them and were like, "Hi, we liked your son," or "We like didn't like what your son did."
Wow.
It was
Okay.
interesting, but
That is really
also,
surprising.
yeah. So back then, like people would also like live blog the show, like you would with The Bachelor, or what not now.
Sure.
And my parents never let me read them because they were like, you're 12, let's not expose him to this. And then I went back and found them a good 10 years later, a few years ago. And people
Uh-huh.
would say some things on the internet, like about 12-year-olds, and it was kind of mean. So I see why they
Yeah.
never let me see them.
I don't blame you at all. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
good thing, people like Taylor and Greg were on the show because I'm sure they absorbed most of the backlash as
Yeah.
like we see now, rather than
But like,
hate towards you.
yeah, but like even then, like Taylor was 10. Like you
Exactly.
shouldn't like do that. Like you can't call a 10-year-old a bitch and then like feel good. I don't know how you feel good about yourself after you do that. Let me put it that way.
Right. I like to hope that most of those people are fellow kids, but I have no clue. I wasn't really.
No, they're like
Know.
25-year-olds who work for the Huffington Post. They're like my age now.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's wild. Um, if you were to have kids in the future, would you be okay with putting them through Kid Nation?
So if I were to have kids in the future, would I be okay? I think I would. Yeah. I think like for all of its warts, it was an interesting experience. It's something to talk about, and it certainly like gave me valuable life experience I hadn't had until that point. So I'd like coach them a little bit more by being like, this is how reality TV works. They're not looking for you to do the right thing. They're looking for you to do the thing that tells a story. And, with that advice, yeah, I think I'd let them do it.
Okay, that's great. Speaking of like the reality TVX aspect, to what degree would you say it was, a reality show experience, or where was it actual reality?
Right. So let me be very clear. There wasn't like a script handed to us that was like, hey, this is going to happen. But also, let's be very clear that journals wrapped in leather are not written in laser printer. So, like, obviously, there was some Deus Ex Machina stuff where the producers would say, we think there's trouble to be caused around this, so we'll put it in the journal and do that. And then the kids have to deal with it.
Okay.
So there was things like that were designed to cause discord and to cause trouble and to cause stories to happen, but it was never. And maybe like, let's go find this person and have a discussion with them. It was never, hey, go be mad at Olivia or go be nice to Taylor or Greg.
Gotcha.
Like they definitely created situations where things got out of control and things escalated, but it was never told to us to do that.
Gotcha. What was the most difficult part of not having the commodities, and which of them did you miss the most?
Difficult part about not having commodities. I'm gonna assume you mean things like the internet and books and
Yeah, even stuff like, toothbrushes and like the limited outhouses.
yeah. So okay, the limited outhouses for the first couple of days was really messed up, but we got those in short order fixed. Like we got the rest of the 8 in a normal amount of time. Other than that, like I don't know, we didn't really miss it that much. Like there were toothpaste brushes for us to have. There was toothpaste. Like showers were every couple of days after the showdowns, just because like they were messy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really missed anything besides, honestly, ink and pen.
Gotcha.
Because like being able to write things down in quill and ink is not easy.
Right.
And maybe like a cookbook or two would have been, but I don't know if I really missed, because remember like social media did not exist the way it does now. Back then, Reddit had just started. Facebook was for college kids only. Twitter is a year old or 2 years old. So none of that existed for me. I didn't really need the internet back then as much as I did it today.
Right. That makes sense. What was your favorite part of being on the show?
Favorite part of being on the show, I think, honestly, like I met some really cool people there. We had a lot of really interesting experiences. I think just the whole like, even if it as much of a framework as we were given, the fact that we had some choices of our own destiny and we had to work together to make those happen. I really liked I really kind of like the whole leadership and cooperation aspect of it. If that is, makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. When you were a town council member, did you ever consider giving the gold star to yourself or another town leader? And was something like that even possible?
So, would I have given the gold star to myself? So that is a good question because we thought so. The producers never gave us any rules, so I'm sure we could have awarded it to ourselves, but I have no idea how that would have played out and been edited for the camera.
Yeah.
But we also I think the first episode decided, no, we don't want to do that.
Sure.
Like, we're not going to be those people. And this is one of those things where I think kids as a whole have this really. Some people might call it naive, but I'm going to call it altruistic way of seeing the world, where they're like, we know it's not a great look to award it to ourselves and we should give it to other people. So that's what we're going to do by default. We're not going to say by default, we're going to try to award it to ourselves. And, it's not going to be a good look.
Right. I got you. So on top of that, so you were one of the longest serving town council members. I mean, you won your first re-election against Olivia. So you're only voted out in the second election. So because of that, the amount of window you had to actually win the gold star, aside from giving it to yourself, was really shortened. Do you have any sort of regrets about that? Because that made it harder to get the gold star?
No, I don't particularly have any regrets about not being in the leadership position for that short amount of time. I wasn't in the show for the gold star. Like, it would have been nice to get one. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should have gotten at least one of the smaller ones. Don't get me wrong about that. But
yeah,
it's not what I was there for. Like, I legitimately, if a bit naively, was like, I want to do this to show that kids can do a better job with the world. Because again, I wasn't trying to win the reality TV competition. I really wasn't.
100%. I got that. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of the second election, how did you feel about the blue team after they voted you out for Greg in the second election? And what was the transition to being like a Bonanza citizen like?
So the second election, so a little secret is that the votes were not 7-2. So
Okay.
Olivia, if you remember, both Olivia and Greg ran against me, right?
Yes.
So the votes were actually 4 for Greg, 3 for Olivia, and the remainder for me.
So
They just kind. Go ahead.
Sorry. So I thought Olivia only ran against you in the first election, and then it was only Greg that ran against you in the second election. That's not the case.
That's not the case. As much as,
Okay.
my memory may be faulty, you guys had the actual episodes to reference it, but as far as I remember, the votes were split in that last.
Okay.
And they assigned them all to Greg, so that way it looks like a landslide.
Yes.
Because he was the winner by default, so they weren't fudging the election outcome, but it was not the same.
That's crazy. So Olivia ended up running against you both times in the first and the second election.
Yeah, from what I remember. I may be wrong, but as far as I remember, yeah.
Okay, that's kind of crazy. So that is really crazy because when most people were watching it the first time, it was edited in a way to make it seem like everyone voted against you, aside from yourself and Alex.
Right, which is what they wanted to show, that I was just out of favor with everybody, which is true. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't well liked at that point in time, but they could not arrive at a consensus of who was going to succeed me.
Gotcha. That is really interesting. Speaking of which, so when you did lose, I mean, what are your feelings about the future of the blue team? Of it being put in Greg's hands.
Well, at that point, we had what, 11 days left. I wasn't particularly like I gotten this, three-quarters of the way through, and I think the future of the blue team, like, honestly, I wasn't in fear that the blue team was going to suddenly become the worst because the mix of people we had was pretty good at winning showdowns, pretty good at like making things run well at the stores. Like we had a pretty good mix of people. So I think even with Greg or Olivia's leadership, it's not like they can threaten me with law enforcement. I could just be like, no.
Yeah.
And B, didn't have much time left, and C, like I don't know. I never felt like we were in danger of going entirely off the rails. I was like, Greg's a bit of a dick, but not Greg is going to kill me. Or Greg's going to lead us all off a cliff.
100%. What were your relationships with Greg and Olivia, by the way? And I'm sure it might have changed a lot throughout the show as well.
So, I mean, Greg was like almost every older person that I knew at school. 3 years older than me.
Yeah.
Kind of a jock. Did his own thing. Talked a lot about, girls, sports, racing.
Yeah.
And we were chill most of the way through.
Okay.
It's just like at the end, things got a little bit heated between us. For reasons that I cannot remember for the life of me. I might have said something that implied he was not as smart as he was. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Olivia and I, so Olivia, at least at the time, was a very, she was doing her best to protect her sister from, us, which is probably a very noble goal.
Okay.
And probably a very needed goal, because, we would cuss like sailors when the cameras weren't around.
Definitely.
And she was trying to, she was there, she felt responsible for her sister, and her value system at the time was very much, she grew up in a very Christian, a very, strict community, and that's the values she had, and I was none of those things. So we argued a lot because we just had very different value systems.
That makes sense. Speaking of which, I believe it's in the third or maybe the fourth episode. That episode's like largely centered around like religion and such.
Yep.
And a lot of, like they'd interview some of the people, and some of them did not really have nice things to say about like Hinduism and stuff. So did you ever experience discrimination because of your religious beliefs or because of your race by cast members on the show or even producers?
So I don't think I was discriminated against. Like, no one ever said you can't come in because you're brown or you can't come in because you're not Christian, right?
Yeah.
And there was no, like, you have to use a separate badge. None of the, actual terrible discrimination of, you cannot do this, you are not allowed this opportunity. Do I think I got picked for the show because I was a brown nerd and that with a bowl cut and that fit a stereotype? Yes. I think that had something to do with it. Do I believe that people might not have taken me as seriously because I was Hindu? I didn't understand their beliefs. Probably. All of those things. And I didn't have a lot of the pop culture framework that they did because that's not what I listened to then. I was very much more attuned to Indian culture than I am now, or to American culture.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if it was ever blatantly, but during that religion episode, that really got heated because I've always lived my life from a position as a minority, right?
Sure.
My parents were like, hey, most people here believe in Jesus. You're going to have to go along with that. You might have to talk about Christmas. You might have to talk about Easter. People might, like, when you go to the Boy Scouts, they might have you do a Christian service rather than a non-religious one, a non-specific religion one, right?
Yep.
And so I kind of applied that whenever we were discussing religion. I'm like, why don't we all learn from each other? Why don't we all get along? And for people where they were the majority, where their religion was the majority, where they came from, they didn't really have that frame.
Okay.
And so it led to this natural clash of, what I'm doing is right, you are going to hell, so go away.
Yeah.
And I just kind of rolled with it because that's what had been around my entire life. It never been as blatant, but there was always this, you're not Christian, you're a little bit different.
Sure. So, speaking on that point, I mean, that religion episode was largely guided by the journal. Were you guys ever like, let's not do what the journal says this time? Or did you feel like you had no choice because that's just what the journal said?
I feel like we did at some point. I think we had the choice to disobey the journal. It just never occurred to us for some reason. Like, I
Yeah.
think if we had said we're going to not follow the journal, that would have been a great storyline and they would have definitely encouraged it. But for whatever reason, we just decided to obey the instructions in the book, and it never occurred to us. At least, it never
Right.
occurred to me.
Because, I'd see you guys on the show, and whenever something wildly unpopular would be said in the journal, you guys would all be scared to announce it, to the town and everything. Because it was just like, most of the time there are terrible ideas that would just get people really
Yeah.
angry. Like, by episode 7, you'd be like, oh, the journal told us something. Everyone's groaning, getting angry.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, would you even feel, like, scared to go check out the journal and stuff some days? Or did you mostly believe it was, like, to help you? Or do you just think it was mostly, like, to cause trouble back then?
I mean, we were like, it was more like this is the rules of the game, and we have to play the game because this is the game that was created by the producers to have the show, right?
Sure.
Like in Survivor, there are challenges. In Jeopardy, there are questions. In Kid Nation, there's the journal.
Gotcha.
Like that's, I guess, how we thought about it. This is the game. We have to play the game.
Okay, that's a good way of thinking about it for sure. Do you still keep in touch with any of the cast members?
Yeah. So I keep in touch with a few of the cast members: DK, Morgan, Olivia, Mallory, Laurel. I saw Kennedy last summer when she did an internship out here in Seattle.
At Microsoft or
No, she was
just
interning at the ACLU in King County,
okay.
which is the county Seattle is in, and so she was out here. Um, Mallory, then I have friends with a lot more of them on Facebook. I just reconnected with Sophie. Mike lives not more than a couple miles from me. Michael lives about half a mile that away.
Okay. So
So
you've
yeah, there's
seen a
quite a
lot
few
of them
people
in
now.
person and stuff?
Every once in a while, like they all live in different states. So
Yeah.
like, what if I like? Honestly, I'd planned to go see a few people this summer, but pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's usually the people in the area that I've seen.
Okay. That's great. If CBS were to do a reunion in any capacity, like either like one episode of like an adult nation, or if they were to reboot Kid Nation, would you want to have any sort of role or part in that?
Yeah, I'd love to be a part of like a reunion. I'd love to be a part of an adult Kid Nation. I'd love to see what happened in the intervening 12 years, because I think as we got older, we matured, we became open to more opinions. And honestly, I think we just spend a lot of it chilling and talking. I don't think there'd be as many arguments this time around,
Yeah, definitely.
because
While
we have
you're
12 years of catching up to do. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Sorry about that.
very good.
While you're on the show, did you ever want to go home?
Did everyone to go home? Not really. No, I always felt like it was something I committed to and I needed to finish.
Okay, that's a good mindset to have. Who do you think did the most as a leader?
Who did the most as a leader? It was either me, Laurel, or Michael. Because Michael definitely had a really big part in making sure that this thing ended without anyone dying
Yeah,
or war. Laurel did a great job, I think, sympathizing and empathizing with her district, and like their district was very empathetic and feeling towards each other, and that was not something any other district had.
right.
And I actually really respected that and admired that. Our district was pretty much, we're going to win, we're organized to win, we are going to be like an army. And theirs was like, we're going to care about each other's feelings, we're going to make sure everyone feels included, and that's just not something we did. And I really admired that.
Definitely. Okay. Who do you think deserved a gold star but did not get one?
Ooh, that's a good question. Deserved a gold star but didn't get one. I mean, I'm going to go with me. But
Okay.
first, hey, but that's a little, self aggrandizing there. But two, I think there are many people who did great things that, see, honestly, I can't remember who won a gold star. Hold on. I don't remember the full list here.
I could start shooting off some names.
Actually, yeah, if you could, I'd appreciate that.
Kennedy won a gold star. Sophia, Morgan, Greg. I believe Blaine won a gold star.
Yep.
Alex won a gold star. Zach.
Valerie, you mentioned.
Migle. Ooh.
Let's see.
Michael won a gold star. A lot of green guys won gold stars for sure. I think Hunter won a gold star. Nathan won a gold star.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people did and who would have gotten them, but let's see. I believe Olivia, I think should have gotten one. For her, I mean, she did do a great job, and she was very supportive. See, Randy, I think should have gotten one. She was particularly, I think, involved, and I think put a great effort in. I don't know. I feel like the gold star, like we had these really idealistic notions for it, but I'm not sure if those ever. Honestly, like I'm not sure if those ever qualified. And also Mike for being one of the original council members.
Okay, that's fair.
I think those are the three. Because I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. There are just some other like popular suggestions. I know people were really advocating for Jared for getting the gold star and everything. Or
who else?
Jared. Let's see. Laurel. Laurel was the other one that I had in mind.
She got a gold star.
I don't think she did. Oh, and does she get in the last episode?
She got one.
Okay, that was just a slip of the mind there.
No, you're good. Like I said, because if you realize that we had 13 episodes and 3 final gold stars, right?
Yeah.
3 final gold stars. So almost half the cast did get one.
Yeah. So, do you have any like thoughts on like people that weren't really featured on the show a lot? Like this could be like Jasmine or Natasha. I mean, just people who are just really, or like Eric. All these people, hardly had any screen time. So if you could give us like any insights into like who they were and stuff.
I mean, so Eric was always a pretty chill person. Always great to talk to. He had, I think, a big part in the leadership decisions of the Green team, and I'm not sure why he wasn't featured as much as he should have been. Savannah, again, fairly chill, did her own thing, was part of the kind of the animal crew.
Yeah. That
was hanging out over there. Jasmine, she was great. She had a lot. She in the talent show. She had a lot of talent. She did some great singing, from what I remember. I also, the guy who should have gotten more screen time is Brett.
Brett.
Because really you see him like once or twice the entire series.
Yeah.
And that's just like they did him dirty.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Was there anything cool that happened with Brett when you guys were there?
I mean, he participated in a few of the early showdowns particularly well. I think, like we spent a lot of time trying to mess with the animals that were on. Like it was a working branch that we were on, right?
Yeah.
And so he was part of that, but I don't think they could really show that part because I don't think like animal handling laws.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, I mean, he was there for a lot of like the friendly stuff that happened. We're hanging around one sunny afternoon, we should go do this.
Okay, that's fun. So did you have any experiences with Jared? Because I just know, like, when we hear from cast members, like, now, like, they always have all these, like, crazy Jared stories.
I mean, so yeah, I was a council member during some of Jared's more explosive outbursts. There was, like, the time, he destroyed Devad's stand because capitalism got a little bit too crazy. There's a few, like, I want to set these things on fire.
Okay.
Incidents. But it was very much he did. I mean, I was there for a lot of the things that other people have described, just because as part of the council, we were there like, can you calm him down? Can you get this under control again, please?
Yeah.
So I don't really have anything new to contribute, but I was there for almost anything anyone else mentioned.
Gotcha.
Of something getting destroyed, something getting set on fire, something like that.
Okay. If there's something you could confirm for us, though, Michael made an AMA a few years ago in which he says that Jared started maybe 5 or so brawls, or just got into fights. Do you remember anything about that? Because we never saw it on the show.
So I can see. I don't know if the whole number was 5, but that definitely happened.
Okay.
So, like, I mean, he'd get angry at something, and a punch would be thrown, and then punches would be thrown back, and all of a sudden, we'd have to start pulling people apart.
That's crazy. Are you comfortable with saying like anyone he got in a brawl with, or?
I think it was mostly Devad and her crew over the potato stand.
Oh, okay,
Like that was
interesting.
a big thing.
Yeah.
Or like whatever business venture she was doing at the time, because they had competing markets and it was the whole thing.
That's crazy. I don't know why in my head I thought Jared would be slinging punches on Greg or something.
He
But
might have done that too. So actually, that was me. So in the last episode, I don't know if it's shown in its entirety. The second to last episode,
uh
I get into a fight with Greg.
really? Okay.
Yeah, there's one where he's like cussing me out because he got mad about something.
Yeah.
And what you don't see is where he and I were swinging at each other, and he like backs up against the window, and I go through it.
You go through the window.
Yeah, like I don't
Wow.
fly out of it, but like I
Yeah.
definitely broke the window. And the
Oh my
producers were
god.
like, "Crap, we got to stop this before someone actually does get hurt."
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Wow. That's nuts. Wow. And
yeah, he was really angry at me for reasons I can't even remember at this point, and we
uh,
just went in. We just went for it.
wow. Did you get into any other like altercations?
Nothing. I don't think I ever got into another physical altercation. Didn't particularly want to. We argued a lot. We yelled a lot. Trust me. Maybe someone
Yeah.
shoved me out of the way to leave a room, but like Taylor, I think kicked me once to leave a room, but
Yeah.
never anything as crazy as that. There was never like a punch thrown until then.
Right. Wow. Was that like the biggest fight of your life?
Up until then, probably honestly, because he
Yeah.
was
Wow.
almost twice my size,
Yeah, exactly. He
and
was a powerhouse, no doubt.
yeah, he was huge. So I mean, I was on the wrong end of that particular fight, and I had no experience with it. So I was just doing what I could.
Gotcha. Dang. Um, did you have any thoughts on Devad and her, businesses and stuff? And something that I was curious about after like her big potato episode, I don't think she's ever seen in the series again, like on camera, oddly enough. So, I mean, like sort of what happened to her, and like I just feel like her businesses were abruptly, halted there.
For quite a while. So what you're not seeing is that they may have decided to focus on the business that episode, but
Yeah.
those are clips from all throughout the series.
Okay.
So a lot of what you see in these episodes where they're like trying to focus and tell the story like one or two or three stories per episode,
Yeah.
those are clips that are being taken from all across the series. They're just focusing on them for this one episode, for this one episode, for this one episode.
Gotcha.
And that's how they're because and this is the thing that's really confusing when trying to explain why when you're asking me what happened when, and I have to kind of reference it because things happened for you in a different order than they happened for me. So I have to match
Gotcha.
the timelines up.
Yeah,
But no, those
definitely.
businesses went on for a good week or a week and a half.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And how would you feel when she would, ask for the gold star?
I feel like we didn't really like it. Whenever Devad asked for the gold star, I'd be like, okay, congratulations, you've created. I mean, obviously not in these words because I was 12, but
Yeah.
you've created capitalism. I'm not going to give you more money for making money. We just felt
Yeah.
like it wasn't for this because I think we were also very idealistic. The original four of us, we were like, we want to do this for the good of the town, people who contribute to the town's and overall good, and we never really saw her actions as doing that.
Right. Okay. That's fair. Yeah, speaking of controversial figures, was there anything about Taylor that like we did not get to see on the show where maybe like she was bratty or maybe even like nicer than the show perceived?
Yes, I mean they definitely played up the Taylor being bratty part. Like, don't get me wrong, like that. Like, she definitely like had her moments where she would say things like, "I want to do the dishes, deal with it," you know,
Yeah.
all of that. But I think that's part A. You realize if you play a character like that, you get some more screen time.
Uh-huh.
B, I think Taylor was, did sometimes legitimately feel that way. But also, when she was working with us as like a council member, she actually tried to put in the effort to like have a constructive discussion with us. But like as I said, like that's the whole deal with it thing tells a bigger and better story than we had a nice discussion about what to do about the trash problem.
Gotcha.
So there were both sides to her. It's just one side got played up because it's a better story, and I think both Taylor and the producers understood that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes some sense definitely. Do you ever wish other aspects of reality shows would be incorporated into Canation? Like, for example, Survivor has the mechanic where you can vote off weak links or, you know, stuff like that.
I don't know if I would have liked the ability to vote people off, just because I think as a kids, we needed all the help we could get. What I do wish though is like, have you seen the show Cutthroat Kitchen?
I have not.
So it's a show where Alton Brown hosts, and it's a cooking competition where you get a certain amount of money, like $20,000, and you can spend it to give other contestants like downgrades, like they have to cook with one hand tied behind their back, or all of their knives have to be made out of tinfoil. Or you can spend money to get yourself upgrades, like a fancy new stand mixer rather than having to, whip your meringue by hand.
Yeah.
I think that would have been really fun.
Yeah.
To be like, this council member, this team has to do all the dishes with one hand behind their back. Or like the showdowns. Like, I think that would have been a really fun mechanic to have.
Yeah, that would have been. Do you have any regrets about switching up your blue team when it came to the episode where you guys were mixing up members, especially after Laurel decided to keep all of like the green team intact?
No, I have no regrets, just because I felt that Greg and Blaine were getting a little bit too chummy and we needed to fix that problem.
Okay. Gotcha. And do you in the show you did say that you wish that you gotten rid of Greg instead of Blaine? Is that still a true sentiment?
That's a very true sentiment. I mean, Greg at the time, I can't speak for how he is now. He was obnoxious. He was my biggest detractor, and yet somehow one of my biggest cheerleaders. And Blaine was a really chill, really nice guy to chat and hang around with. It's just when the two of them got together, weird things happened. So I would have much rather kept Blaine.
Gotcha. Was there anything you were surprised that got cut from the series when you finally got to watch it?
Oh, cut from the series. So, there was a lot of random moments, people just hanging around, having a good time that I think weren't, part of the whole conflict, driven narrative of the series.
Yeah.
What is interesting though is that when we have the showdowns, it'd be you have to finish in a certain amount of time, or else the town doesn't get the whole reward kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we never had wristwatches during that time.
So it'd just be Jonathan Karsh letting you guys know.
Yep. So we don't know what time had actually passed, what time had happened, and so a lot of us suspect some of those times were inaccurate.
Gotcha. Yeah, some stuff you just thought, like when we were watching it, we'd be like, "There's no way the green team's gonna be able to get this, tower over the line," and then suddenly
Right.
they just do it within 6 seconds. And it's like,
Right, exactly, right?
Yeah, exactly. In one of this is also related to Michael's AMA. He describes, a certain amount of either like relationships or some of the kids, as he calls it, hooking up on the show. Is that something that you've seen or experienced?
So, I mean, relationships and hooking up as they are for 12 to 15-year-olds. Let's be very clear. But there's also a clause in my contract that says if I got someone pregnant or got pregnant or gave someone or received an STD, CBS is not liable for it.
Right.
So that was entertaining watching my parents read that amendment. But I mean, there were people who developed crushes and held hands for a couple of days, and maybe someone made out with someone.
Okay.
I don't know the full extent of what happened because obviously I wasn't looking for it, but there was some hand holding and kid relationship stuff. Yeah.
Okay, that's more along the lines of what I thought when hookup was used. Okay.
Yeah, maybe someone actually hooked up. I wouldn't know anything about that. I have no idea. Obviously I was not looking for that.
Yeah, 100%. I get that, definitely. In the first episode of the show, Jared says he has the worst day in 3 years. Do you have any idea what happened to Jared 3 years ago?
What happened to Jared 3 years ago? I honestly have no idea. Maybe he had to go to summer camp. Maybe it was a brand new day at a new school. Maybe he moved. I don't know, but you're right. That was really oddly specific now that you call it out. And I cannot think of... None of us ever thought to follow up on it, and definitely should have.
Okay. That is something that we really have to find out. I mean, if you hear back, we might have to do a follow-up.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the secrets of Jared are lost lost to the sands of time, honestly.
Definitely. So, we're getting close to the end of the interview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so how has your, life turned out, given everything related to Kid Nation and everything? Like, do you feel like it's been a positive impact for you?
So I think Kid Nation was a positive impact on my life. It was very much this thing of like, it gave me a lot of real life experience that I just really hadn't had up until that time. I
Yeah.
was a kid who was 2 years younger than everyone else. I was fairly sheltered. My, you know, my life was pretty much, do what your parents say and do it well. Here's your spelling bees. Here's your school books. And after that, I kind of got I got a real world shock of like, the world isn't just books and spelling. There's like a lot of real life interaction with people that you have to learn how to do.
100%.
Also, I learned how to make Jaeger bombs before I knew what they were. So
Yeah, bonanza bombs.
yes, so none of us knew what they were until I got to college, like 4 or 5 years later, and I was like, "Oh my god, wait a minute!" And then I texted Laurel or Olivia, and I was like, "Do you realize what they taught us how to do?"
Yeah, who came up with the bonanza bomb?
Greg and Blaine.
Greg and Blaine.
They
Okay,
used to be called Greg and Blaine specials for a few episodes.
gotcha. And then, bonanza bomb has related to Jaeger bomb. Do you know who
Yes,
came up with the name? Was it like a crew member?
I don't know. It must have been someone just hanging around one day who said this was a better name for it. I could not tell you.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like
Special.
there's a scene at one of the end of the episodes where the 4 council members are standing on a table, like just dropping dropping a shot in and chugging the soda.
Yeah.
And now that I look back on it, I was like, I realized why my parents were so horrified by that scene.
Yeah, that's whack. But that's really cool. Everyone I know who watched that definitely got a real chuckle out of it.
Yeah, it was entertaining, and there was a lot more, weird shit like that went down. But yeah, no, I mean, I learned a lot about like, this is what real life is. This is how you have to work with people. Not everyone's gonna like you, and it was a really cool experience. Like, it's always a really cool trivia point. I always win two truths and a lie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that my friends like, at a party they might have a couple of drinks, and they're like, "Do you know what he did? You got to see this video."
Yeah.
And I'll just sit there and you're like, all right, let's do this. But it's just one of those cool trivia things that gave me a lot of experience, and like I think it was an overall positive experience. And I stay in touch regularly with quite a few people, and they're all great people to know.
Yeah, that's honestly great. Definitely. So have you been up to what are you up to now?
What am I up to now? So my life is not nearly as exciting as well, actually, in the last couple of weeks it has been, as dealing with a bunch of us running around a desert. But right now, I live in Seattle. I work at Microsoft. I work in cloud computing, and I don't know the average demographic of your viewers. But so what I do is I pretty much my job for the last few years has been every time Tim Cook or the CEO of a company is showing off something on stage,
Yeah.
like a brand new thing they built, there's a guy backstage who's sweating bullets to make sure it all goes correctly.
Okay.
And that's
you're
kind of like my
sweating
job.
bullets. Okay.
Yeah, like I'm the guy who builds designs and makes sure that stuff doesn't fail on stage in front of thousands of people.
Okay. Great.
So I do that. Other than that, I live, in Seattle. Have a dog, have a girlfriend,
Great.
and with the last, you guys have probably heard of the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, right?
I'm sorry, I have not.
Okay, so there's been protests the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
So, 2 weeks ago on May 30th, I went to my first big protest, and I got tear gas thrown in my face,
Oh wow.
which was not particularly fun. And so after that, I've been out, and so if you look up where the Capitol Hill protests have been in Seattle, it's about 5-10 minute walk away from where I live.
Uh-huh.
So the last 2 weeks, I've gotten really good at protesting. Like we've been working with medics. I've been helping organize. Like a lot of the skills that I used during Kid Nation are coming back to life right now.
That's amazing.
And it's like, how do we coordinate medics? How do we coordinate supplies? How do we make sure everyone is there? Everyone is being safe. How do you deal with the fact that police are throwing flashbangs and tear gas canisters at you?
Right.
And what happened is, so that these protests took place in front of a police building. And on last Monday, the police were like, well, never, because the night before they had nearly killed someone with a flashbang grenade.
Oh, okay.
And they said, okay, we're abandoning the building. and they walked away. They like emptied the entire building and just boarded it up and left.
Yeah. Wow.
And in that time, and after that, a bunch of the protesters and the groups got together and claimed like a 6-block radius as this is now the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. There are no police allowed here. This is just going to be a chill area. And so it's like, a small kid nation sprung out.
That's
10 minutes
that's
that way.
crazy. Awesome.
But yeah, it was very interesting. And on Monday, they were like, on Tuesday, there were some tweets that were like, send food. We're running out of food. And I'm like, okay, guys, you're relieving Kid Nation episode 1. You got to stop doing that. Get some food. Here's how to cook.
100%.
Yeah, so that's pretty much like the last 2 weeks of my life have been fairly entertaining, and I'm just getting a lot of flashbacks to, and I, talked to Laurel and Mike, and they're like, yep, we're seeing it too. A lot of flashbacks to the first few episodes.
Definitely. That's crazy. That's good. Do you have any plans for the future?
Plans for the future, man. I don't know. I'm already like people ask you that when you're in high school, and I'm like, wait, I'm already in the future, right? Like I'm 25.
Yeah.
Everyone was asking about what I'd be doing now, but further from now, I definitely still want to start my company, run a business, maybe get involved in local politics a bit.
Yeah, that'd be
ever since Kid Nation, I found that particularly interesting to me.
Okay.
And especially with the unrest that's going on right now, I really want to be an activist and participate and make life better for people. So however I get to do that, whether it's building something in tech, running for office, that's what I really want to continue to focus on.
Okay, that's great. I will give you some credit. I did talk about you in one of my videos. Probably your strongest point. I feel like you're a really good strategist. Like you're a really tactical guy, especially when you first developed your team. Like you had Greg and Blaine. I knew for sure. Like you said, you want to keep friends together, but I mean, you got the 2 biggest powerhouses there, and you got like Alex and Nathan, who are very smart guys. I just felt like, in terms of a stacked team, like you were there. And what also is kind of very advantageous for you was the fact that the leaders in those showdowns would always be given like intellectual type things to do, like a lot of like history trivia or something would be involved. So I just thought you guys were just always smoking down the showdowns. Like it was always like a battle first or second for you guys.
No, I appreciate that. So that's actually what I did. I picked the 2 biggest guys for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And I picked who I thought were the smartest guys, and I picked like a good mix of people. I definitely was like, this is what needs to occur for me to, kind of figure out what's going on for me to have my best shot at leading people.
Exactly. No, and out of everyone at the very start, like when people were picking their teams and stuff, you're the only person who seemed to have like an actual like battle strategy, like a really good laid out idea. So that's something I give you a lot of props for, definitely.
I appreciate it. Like, I don't know if I was ever that like I need a battle strategy, but I was like, I need to make sure I have a balanced team, and I just kind of went about it. Yeah, I appreciate that.
In this interview, you said you had some sort of army going on.
Like, as in, like everyone had a role, and everyone had like a. It was never like I wanted to pick all of my friends, or I wanted to pick all the people who were like me. It was, there are roles we need, and I'm going to pick a diverse and interesting team.
Yeah, definitely. Again, just max props to you, Anjay. And thanks a lot for being part of this interview. Really appreciate it. We can link your Twitter down below in the description, of course. Yeah, definitely. Really appreciate it. Sorry, what? You go. Please.
No, I'll send you my Twitter, Instagram. It's, pretty much me talking about the protests that are around here and what's going on. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Pleasure as always. We're interviewing Laurel and DK soon, so if everyone can keep an eye out for that. It'll be a lot of fun, and it was a blast to interview you, Anjay. Hope to see you continue to succeed in everything that you do, my man.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Thank you guys for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully y'all stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll get to chat in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks
so
again, Anjay. Yep. Peace.